Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Reality Lab Talk Show. And this is season 2, titled Untold Stories. And we're about to go through a journey of hearing stories of young men and women who have made impact in our society. Every Thursday, we'll be bringing to you one episode each. And for this day, we have a very illustrious young man in our midst. Let's take a short break and you meet him. Welcome, and this is Reality Lab Talk Show. This is season 2, Untold Stories. As I said earlier, today we are having an illustrious gentleman in our midst who has earned a Bachelor of Social Science in Economics and is also the president of the Frabe College Student Union Government. And tonight we actually be discussing on the topic trekking through the path of leadership as a young person. And today our guest is no other person but President. Permit me to call you His Excellency the President, Augustine Dickson Bona. Welcome to the show, bro.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. And we've been hearing a lot of stories about a lot of young people. And it's a privilege to have you on Reality Lab Talk Show for you to share your story to young people out there who have been looking at you as an icon, who have been looking at you as a mentor, who have been looking at you as an example of leadership to young people. Yeah. Firstly, before we go to your story, I want to ask you a short question for you to tell me, what is your perception about leadership as a young person? What do you think leadership is?
Well, the term leadership has various meanings, but then to me, leadership is all about selflessness. It's all about caring about other people and trying the best you can to provide for them. I once said in the program that leadership is going through hell to bring heaven to others. So that is my perception about leadership. It's all about serving other people.
Okay. So we want to take you back to your preliminary stage as a young person. How is this definition you're giving us now grew up by then when you were just a young person? How did the Bona family help you to become the man you are? How did your academic lineage, how did the society you grew up in has helped you to become who you are today? What is your story in general?
I think the conversation mostly would be centered on leadership. So I want to go back a bit on how I grew up. I am the last son in my family, the last child, I should say. But then ironically, I am the first person to actually enter into university.
Wow.
I think I mastered my art of leadership way back in church because I have been a church boy all through my life. And I think that is just the best place to actually get all the ingredients of leadership that you need, because think about all the prophets, think about all the men of God, think about the beauty that is imbibed in the Bible, and think about those stories that you have been told when growing up, and the moral that your elders, your parents would want you to portray. And I think in many ways, these are all the accumulation of things that has now resulted into what I am today. So I started off in the church, and then it was like simultaneous. being a church boy and as well being somebody that is very much productive way back in primary school. So I realized my first position was to be the rep for an institution that we called the Infant Jesus in church.
Okay.
And then that same year I became a class prefect. I think it was in class 4 or so. And I was the smallest in the class. Well, by virtue of the length, I was the shortest as well. But then I was picked on by my teacher basically because I would be that guy who wants to see the class cleaned up. I would be that guy who would want to see that the class maintains perfect decorum. I would be that guy who does not only perform well during the test, but also help other people to measure up to the level that the teacher actually wants us to be. So that has been the trend, and I went to class 6. I became the assistant head boy, and then we had... So it continued like that. I went on to secondary school. I went to the Albert Academy Secondary School. But then I did not find a perfect niche there. Imagine the structure of the Albert Academy Secondary School. It's like all boys, no strong supervision back then. So with the wisdom of my parents, they had to remove me from the school. And then I took a shot at a private school in Calabar Town, the Holy Family Secondary School, where I think I got the best of all that I actually needed to be the person that I am. So while I was there, I was part of the news journal. Even as a science student, I was part of the news journal. I graduated to being the president of the Speculum News Brief. The other year, I became the head boy of the school. And then I went to university. The year I went to university, I became the president of my youth group in church.
Okay.
In university, year 1, year 2, as early as that stage, I became the president of the Sierra Leone Debating Council. In year 3, I made representation for both Frabe College and the country at large in Ghana twice, where I won the best debater in the whole of West Africa and the best public speaker in the whole of Africa. I think it was in 2018. So the journey, the things that I have gone through, the things that I think I have used as a complementary force to actually take me to where I am today are numerous. But then I cannot ascribe any of those things to any selfish reasons. I think what we need to understand is that there is a difference between politics and leadership. Politics is, for me, a game that looks for more credit and accreditation or whatsoever, the fame, the money, the material gains, whereas leadership is that which you have within you to provide for other people, to make other people feel better, to provide solution for other people. So once you have that in you, you automatically attract people and politics comes crawling at your feet. So there is actually a nexus between politics and leadership. But then if you are to becoming a very good leader, a leader that could have the characteristic of the Nelson Mandela, the Martin Luther King, the Barack Obama, then you must amass lots of beauty and grounds on leadership before thinking of politics. So it has not been easy. There have been times that I actually failed on things that I think I should actually achieve, but that did not break me down. There have been challenges that I think would not permit me to continue up to the level that I am today. But then with the grace of God and with the support of other people around me and the people that really believed in me, I think I am where I am today because of all those reasons.
Okay, thank you very much for this illustrious explanation about yourself. So I want to take you back. We started discussing earlier before the interview commenced about your name.
Oh, okay.
So you are well known for Augustine Dickson Bona.
Yeah.
Personally, I was confused asking you if the Dickson is part of your biological name, and you were giving me some explanation. I believe people out there who might be confused with the same question I asked would want to know, what is your name in actual?
So it all started way back in primary school, that I had to curtail my name to fit my book size,
Okay.
So I have a very long list of names. Yes, I am a Connor, so by virtue of my birth, I automatically have a name for my family side. So I am the second son to my parents. So that makes me a Tamba by the organogram of the Connor people. So I am Augustine Tamba Dudu Bona.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's my name.
All right.
So the Tamba is the Connor name. The Augustine is a Christian name. The Tamba is a Connor name. The Dudu is the name of my grandfather. He was a power man chief, a very great leader. in Nimiko Chiefdom in Kono District. But then he was given a nickname, Diction, because of his ability to write well and bring to reality certain projects that you think he could actualize for the people of his chiefdom. So the white people back then called him Diction because of the choice of his words. So based on the fact that I was given his name, Dudu, and I realized later on that he was called Diction, so I adopted the name Diction. So I have a very long list of names, but then I'm not just using it. And people find the Diction name very much interesting because it's quite weird. And by definition, literally, it's a choice of words. So they just feel like, okay, it's better we call him that way.
All right, so Augustine Diction Bona, I believe a lot of people might have heard that name or might be familiar with that name. So today I know that you are Dudu, I know that you are Tamba.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
So today I also know that you are Kono because I really don't know that.
I am.
So I think it's a wise thing that people know their leader as well.
Yeah.
You understand? Because if I know you better, then I'll be able to copy some of the good virtues within you.
That's correct.
So you talked about you being various times you were prefect, rep in your classes, and you attained leadership roles in your church, and you also became head boy of your secondary school.
Yeah.
You emerged to becoming the president of the Sierra Leone Debating Council, right?
Yeah.
That is huge. But I want to ask this question throughout your path of leadership. How has it become the challenges? Have you ever would you say you have faced failures?
Well, I don't want to
Use the word
apparently use the word failure.
So how would you coin it? What would you say?
Well, I would say there have been pitfalls.
Okay.
There have been shortcomings, and there have been points when you think this is not what I want exactly, but then it's part of what I was expecting. So you just don't downplay the fact that you received less than what you actually expected.
Yeah, because there might be someone out there watching you and thinking Mr. Diction Bona has been the head boy several times. He's a leader in his church. He has been the president of the Sierra Leone Debating Council. Oh, that's great. I want to attain such height like him. So I think they need to know whether you face challenges or pitfalls, as you said.
So it's quite difficult. It's quite difficult, moving in such a consistent trend from primary school to secondary school and now the university. It's quite difficult. There are a lot of sacrifices, firstly, that you would have to make. Attaining the position of assistant head boy way back in primary school places me in a position that I think I am a bit different from other people. In a way, it was an expectation. It was a perception that I built. Because of the respect bestowed on me, because of the service that I was rendering, I realized that I should carry myself in a better way than how the general people are actually looking at how young people are to behave. So with that, you would have to cut down the places you would want to be as a young person. You just don't want to be there because that has a clear definition on the person you are. It goes a long way to defining the personality that you hold. You don't dress anyhow, obviously. Yeah. You don't speak anyhow in public. You don't conduct yourself anyhow. You have an expectation. People are looking you with a different lens now. So you have to measure up to that. Yeah. So in any case, you perform any level below the expectation of people, then that's the first minus on your path. And the world is very competitive. As much as you have all this potential, you have this beautiful leadership ability, there are other young people that are actually having the same things that you have and that are working on themselves in a better way so that they do not fall below standards. So with that, you'd have to cut certain friends, obviously, things that you like. I mean, there have been times when I realized that I love football. I was a very good footballer while coming up, but then I had to cut on that because it affected my studies. It affected certain things that I wanted to do. After running all over the field for the rest of the day, you become tired. Even to study becomes a problem for you. And I realized that if I am to maintain my leadership in church and in school, then I need to perform well in church and I need to pass my exams in school. And playing football for the rest of the day would not give me the amount of grades that I want to become at the level that people are thinking of
to
me.
become an
So I had to cut so many things. And this becomes a challenge. In a way, people that you used to associate yourself with, the very moment you start shying away from the company or the association, they start having an idea about you that, okay, he's acting proud, he's acting all this. But those things should not actually pull you down. Those things should not actually change your idea about the goal that is set in front of you. Because in the end, if you do not perform as how people expect you need to perform, those people that really want your company, that really want your association, would be the first people to speak ill about you. So you need to have a focus, you need to have a goal, and you cannot come below those goals. And yeah, it's quite huge as a young person. As I said just now, you have your coursework to deal with, you have your friendship to maintain, you have your family, you have your personal life to deal with. There are times you don't get it right all the time. You're not able to create the fine balance that you're expected to create. And from this angle, people that are looking at you always assume that you're perfect. Always assume that you have it all. Always assume that you're super smart, and come what may, you would still be able to make the A's or the B plus and all of that. So there have been those times when I couldn't quite balance my academics with my urge to serve people, and it affected me in one way or the other with my grades. And there have been those times when I probably chose to get the grades in a better position, and that affected the way as well that I really wish to have served people. So to creating the balance is actually very important, but then it is very difficult as well. So that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we young people are fighting to create the balance.
So I want to take you to another set of challenge I believe a lot of young people are getting in the area of trekking to leadership as a young person. You know, we as Africans, our culture sometimes limit us from doing things that we should do. As a young person, how did your parents or your family as a whole help you in your path in leadership? Were they frowning at the idea? Were they helping you develop it by their words, by encouragement? What exactly, what side of the coin did they take?
I want to give a bit of credit to my father. He's a very supportive man. Way back when he was very strong. When he realized that I was a very good footballer, I used to play football. I was very excited about football, and my name was all over the place. Like, He used to buy me all my sport kits because for him, what I am interested in is his own happiness. He used to buy me all my sport kits. So when he realized that my direction was changing from football to something that would actually benefit more people, he started packaging his advice and counseling in that same direction. So he has been very supportive. He would call me and ask me, what's going on? How is your leadership going? These and these and these I know are the things that are disturbing you, but then you should not give up. So he has been that constant motivator, that constant support that I would always want to run to whenever I feel like I am down or I feel confused about certain things. So he has been very supportive. And my mother too, it always fascinates her that people tell her, okay, you begin now with president or you begin at this. And she's very, very much particular about how I carry myself and what people say about me. So she would go around the place investigating, what's people's opinion about me and if I am doing fine or if I'm doing badly. Then she would come quietly again and say, these and these are the things that I'm hearing about you. It's very bad. You need to veer. You need to package yourself in a way that more people would appreciate you. So that's the kind of family that I have, and that's the kind of leadership. And my sisters too. I could still recall while vying for the long shot presidency, that is how I call the student union presidency, because it came in one weekend. We were there at the pools, and then I emerged victor. So I had this dream to becoming the president of the student union body for Abbey College, because the very moment I realized that I have a result to enter Abbey College, I started probing into the beauty of Abbey College.
I would love to cut you down there because we're reaching there. We're reaching there, but I just want to transpose you again back to where we are. So I want to ask you just a question. You mentioned something that your mother actually take on to the street or to people and
Yeah.
ask them about you. I want to ask you this question. Personally, I actually have some certain opinions about the opinions of people about me. So I want to ask you, as a leader, how would you term critics? How would you term people's opinion about you? What do they think about you? How do you receive that? How do you handle that? What is your perception about people's opinion or criticism? How do you handle that?
So, firstly, it's clear I don't have critics. I have updaters. You know, and I don't take their words in the form of criticism. I consider their words as feedback. And it is very important. You know, there is no law degree for public opinion.
Of course.
But then public opinion is very important. In a way, as much as you would not have 100%, you will not have it in 100% accuracy, there are a few things pointed out about you or the way you're moving that are clearly correct. You know, we are humans, we're not perfect, and there are times you get little omissions that you yourself could not pick up unless you're being given an update or feedback from people. I don't do too well with people who go to the point of unreasonably, you know, raising criticism against a leader, because it is quite a different world when you are at the center stage and the sparklight is all over you. It's quite a different stage, you know. They're there, knowing not what you're going through, their feet not in your shoe, and then they're saying all sort of things. But you should not downplay what they're saying. You should not clearly dismiss their statement. Look into it and give an open heart to it, assess it, and then phantom out those things that you think are correct from their statement, and then try to work on it. Because our life in the end is accumulation of the evaluation that we do, the basic time that we make to go back, the retreats that we have as individual. Because it has been said, I think, by Aristotle, that an unexamined life is not worth living. So if you don't have time to assess yourself, then obviously people would assess you, and it will come either in the form of praise or in the form of criticism. And when it did come to you, you must make time to clearly and objectively and reasonably embrace the good things that they say and try to work on the other things that they say and it's not correct about you. So yes, I don't have critics, I have feedbackers.
All right, that is so good. One of my heroes, Miles Monroe, says that leadership and followers. He said, what distinguishes leaders from followers is their mind, how they think, how they reason. What a leader thinks different from how a follower thinks. So we want to take a short break, and we'll be coming back to discuss the big story from our very own guest, President Augustine Dickson Bona. Stay glued. Welcome, everybody, and this is Reality Lab Talk Show Season 2, titled Untold Stories. And we are having our guest here, who is President Augustine Dickson Bona. And we want to take you to the big story. You are the president of, would I say, the best university in Sierra Leone?
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah, of course. I'm convinced.
Fuabe College, you're convinced and you're sure.
Yeah.
And he is the president of the Student Union government. We want to know the journey towards being the president of the Student Union Government. You started saying something that I caught you because I know we had to go to the story. So how did it begin? You perceived it in your heart since entering to the college?
Well, as I said, it's really crazy, you know. When I got my awards and I realized that I would be making my way to Fabi College because that's the only institution I was destined to actually attend. I couldn't make any other choice. I started probing into the beauty, the challenges, the difficulties, and the things that students are going through on the shores of Fabi College. So even at that tender stage, I had their first degree year one, and I think I was about 17, 18, 19, around this age. I started thinking that how could I be of service to these people? How could I form part of the people that want to provide solution to the challenges that we face? Because it is one thing to actually point out the challenges, and it's another thing to be dedicated to actually providing solutions to those challenges as well. So, I mean, at that tender stage, I realized I couldn't do much, so I started building on myself. And that's one of the few advices I want to give to every single person out there. You know, you need to spend every single minute that is been given to you to build on yourself. Yeah, because the prerequisite for inspiring others is to first inspire yourself. You cannot give what you don't have.
Of course.
If you want to develop other people, you must develop yourself firstly. So, at that tender stage, I realized that one of the few ways I could be of help to building the standards of Fabi College was for me to join the debate team because I had started that way back in school, and a swift continuance of that would be a plus on my side as well. So I went in. I could still recall me competing in the interdepartmental debate championship, I think year one, year two. And I was knocked out of the competition at a point when everyone imagined that this man should actually go to the finals. And then I was taken out of it. But then that did not change anything. I continued. And that same year, I became the president of the Silent Debating Council. And one of the major problems that I have realized is the fact that we have students who are brilliant. We have students who have the capacity to have so much knowledge. But then there is a problem with those students transferring those knowledge from where they are in their brain to another set of people. And the major fault with that was their ability to speak openly, the power of public speaking and the spirit of persuasion. So I was of the view that if I could help so many smart minds there build on their public speaking skills and help them to be forthcoming with the public and just wash away the glossophobia thing that is in them, I think it would make more sense and it would help them both within campus and when they go down there in the universe to actually work, you know. So I started doing my bit. At the SLDC, I took over with about 8 members and I transformed the group to about 500 members, you know. And then I initiated the debate and public speaking training for both my members and students of Fabi College who are not part of the Silent Debating Council or who needed training in one way or the other in public speaking and debate. And I also incorporated the writing there. I think if we could do the extra by then to help those students, it would go a long way to actually determine what kind of students or what kind of workers they would be when they get out there. So we did that and it was perfect. And I am proud today I could count more than 100 students, both graduates and people who are still doing their degree, that are a beneficiary of that particular initiative, the training that I instituted. And gladly so, it is still in continuance. The president after me, the president that is now, I mean, they're carrying on with it and it's helping more people. So that was one particular way that I used myself as a solution to some of the problems that we had way back in campus. And that took me to a very long distance. It gave me a bit of recognition. It's made people to appreciate the fact that Fabi College has transformed into students helping students as opposed to administration helping students and all of that. So at a point when everything started happening, I mean, all over the place that, okay, this person, Bona, is traveling to this, he's traveling to that. I think I was more into the challenges of students because I had met lots of other students. I was more into the challenges. And my second version of what I could be to Fabi College campus was now how I could help students outside the debating council, because the debating council was just a small institution. But then for the bigger spectrum, how could I be of help, but then I did not have enough time, and I was going to come back for a second degree, the law program that I'm now studying. So in 2018 coming to 2019, I made a resolution that this particular year, I want to be of profound service to others. I have spent more time for myself, building on myself. I want to give more time to others. So I started up a mentorship initiative, engaging young people, building on their minds, trying to shape their leadership ability and trying to position them well for both their academia and the career that they want to take in the near future. So my personal interaction with them gave me a clue of what the students really want and what was completely absent on campus. So there and then I started my engagement with the administration. So there are things that were not in play that I would just go to the DVC's office or the registrar's office and then make it clear to them that these are the things that students are challenged with. And if you cannot provide it, then the standards of Obey College would never rise from where it is to a better place. The anthems of West Africa would never return. So we need to work on this. And then there were people out there who were watching. There were people who I could go to Facebook, I write those motivational stuffs about Obey College. Raise some spotlight on the challenges and how we as students could help the administration and the government to actually doing that. And then I came up with the big idea that yes, we can rebuild Obey College. And if we are going to succeed in doing that, it should come both from the college administration, the students, and the government or the alumni association. So when I had the chance to aspire for the Student Union president, because I wasn't in the race, I just woke up to the sudden news that, okay, there would be an election next weekend. There was a huge outcry for this Bona guy to show up in the election because of how people consider me to be and because of the beliefs that I have.
So you're saying people cried for you because of what they've heard about you, of what they've seen you doing through your race and leadership and your zest to serve people or to know what students want?
As much as I had the dream that it is possible for me to become the Student Union president.
So you had the dream?
Yes, I had the dream.
Okay.
I had the dream because it is one of the biggest platform to actually deliver change on campus. You could do all your bits without a perfect embrace from the administration because they are a very critical set of people. They are very controversial and they are very not forthcoming all the time. It takes a leadership that is very transformative and inspiring as ours to actually bring them on board and give the students what they actually deserve. So for my point, I was going to wait till year 3, but with the support of other people that saw the need for us to actually expedite the presidency to year 2 and then make the necessary change that we want so that we could get a swift continuance of that. I think that's combined actually inspired me to go into the race that I emerged as the winner.
Okay. All right. So as the president of Obey College, the student union government, what are some of the challenges you're facing?
Firstly, it started with how to get the administration on board. I would say this for fair and fact. Previous student union body did not have a very fine relationship with the administration. In a way, the brand of leadership that we had way back at OL was one that was characterized by a lot of strike, a lot of protests, a lot of conflict and unrest on campus, a lot of the barrel instead of dialogue, And my own brand of leadership is not much fashion in that. I could be a radical, obviously. You've seen me 1 or 2 times doing that. But then I think much of it has to do with dialogue, negotiation, compromise, and existing in a common ground for the good of all, So when I took over, I tried applying that firstly with the administration, and they were not forthcoming. You understand? So we had to do 1 or 2, 3 things that actually led them to call on us. So we started sitting at the table to discuss. But then the major problem that they had was that previous student union body have exhibited lots of credibility problem in terms of finances, in terms of how they administrate, in terms of how they beat their way into so many things. So I had to change the narrative. I had to set the platform not only for me and my executive to exist, but for generations behind us to be proud of the fact that the administration could trust the student union body both with finances and other developmental projects so that the campus could be in a better position. It wasn't easy, but I could proudly say I think we're now on a safer path to actually giving the same image to those who hope to actually become a student union president or executive. And secondly, at such a stage, people are of the opinion that DC gets money. You know, student union, yes. Student union is this, and Bona should be driving a car. Bona should be this top guy on campus. Bona shouldn't be this.
Status.
I mean, yes, the status. Well, I hope it would have been like that, but nonetheless, I don't think I find much pleasure in the status. You know, I don't feel like that's the best way to relate with your subject or being the actual change that you actually want. For me, it's about keeping it simple so that you could get more connection with the subject that you are presiding over, and then seeing them as people that you want to achieve with, not being at such not being at such a status that would even give them the idea that this if I can here I will funny me this if I do this it will that, so you get it. So I've been trying my best to keeping it cool, and again, for those who hope to become a student union president, you should not think about the money. If that's your expectation, then you're missing it at the very first spot. I have had the ministers that I appointed very good, with the expectation from their side that I would be giving them a stipend, I will be giving them monthly salary, we've been doing all sort of things to get ourselves some personal aggrandization, some personal benefit and all of that. And then when they assume the spotlight and they realize that, this is something that is very much selfless and this is not what we were thinking of, they pulled out of it. I respect their decisions, by the way. I respect the fact that they tried the best they can to actually provide support for the students. But then, to other people, this is quite critical. There is a capitation fee that all students pay to the students, to the administration, which will be later transferred to the student union account. I am proud to say that with all the good things that we have done, we've renovated the student union building. We've actually tried the best we can to see that we reduce the tuition fee for students. We're now working on how we could get more buses. We have competitions that we're organizing to bring on board students and build on their capacity. There are lots of other things that we could think about. We've campaigned against sexual harassment on campus and against examination malpractice. Very soon we'll be launching solar lights all over campus so as to enhance more security, especially at night and for when students will be taken to the hostels. Very soon we'll also be launching the project to standardize our library, update it with books that are of more than 10, and also bring on board an e-library platform, so you could even be in your house and then access a library and get hold of a book that will be of much importance to your course area. All these things we have done, all these things we're still doing without a single touch of the capitation fee, the money paid by students. We haven't touched any. So for me, from my own point, it's about the selfless drive. It's about what we can do for our students, not what the students can do for us, because we were elected into office not to satisfy ourselves, not to give ourselves the best of lives, or not to show people that we are of a better standard, but to bring the general student populace on a balance and lift the standards of Rabe College to where we want it to be. Remember, we were called the Anthems of West Africa. You remember, we're the first Western-style institution in the whole of West Africa, sub-Saharan West Africa. And all of that is almost fading away. We have a role to play. We have a task at hand. And, I mean, actualizing that does not come with people meddling with basic fund, 30-40 million that would not even take you to where you want to be. So you need to have a prepared mind. You need to have the idea that I could do this without that. I could do it, and the actual fulfillment that I want is that people get to appreciate the work that we're doing, or the work that we're doing has a direct impact in the lives of our fellow students. That's the idea. And that's the thing I want to sell out to other students.
Okay. All right. This is very good. This is very good. Lastly, I just want to ask you this question. What has been your driving force? Maybe in just a sentence or maybe a word. What has been your driving force since you were young, trekking through this leadership roles? What has been your driving force?
I think my driving force has been to be of service to others.
Service.
It is my strongest belief that a life lived for others is a life that is worth living. You understand? You cannot continue to live a life on your own. You cannot continue to always provide for yourself or think that everything is about me. How about others? I think the world is connected, and in one way or the other, biblically, we are all just one family, and there are deficiencies within the society. And there are people who are endowed with talent, people who are endowed with gifts that should be of service to those who are deficient in those things that they actually want. And if we fail to do it, then we become, as you say, the first servants with the talent that actually went and kept it under the ground and all of that. So I think we need to be of service to others, and we need to do it unconditionally because that is the fulfillment that we should actually have.
So do you consider God being part of all this journey?
God has been at the center of everything. I am very religious and highly social as well.
Okay.
And I do not forget the part that God is playing, is supposed to play, and would be playing.
So would
in
you
my life.
advise leaders to do as well, to make God the center?
If God is not part of your plan, then you don't have a plan, in fact. If God is not part of what you are doing, then you're not doing anything. And unless he builds a house, the builder builds in vain.
Yes. So even rebuilding.
Yes. Even rebuilding private college, God is the rebuilder in chief.
Okay.
I am the assistant rebuilder in chief.
All right. So just a few short questions. I learned that leaders are readers.
Yes.
What is your all-time best book?
The Audacity of Hope, I would say, but then I don't actually dwell in leadership books too much.
Okay.
I love them. I love novels. You understand? So way back when I was in school, I used to love things for the parts and Julius Caesar. But then when I realized that there are other beauties attached in books from personal experience and the journey of people, I think I should actually probe into other books. So I read the book from Obama, The Audacity of Hope, and then The Path Made Clear. It's a recent book by Oprah Winfrey. I would suggest that people read that book, The Path Made Clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that is very good. Who is your mentor?
So I know people will be thinking it's Obama. Serious, but it should be a short question, but I just want to enlighten people a bit.
Okay.
There's a difference between a mentor and the role model. You understand? So the idea of mentorship comes from classical antiquity. There was a soldier going to war, and then he had to leave his son to a guy so that the guy would provide adequate supervision, advice, counseling, and support for the child. And the name of that guy was called mentor. So that was where we have the idea of mentorship. So if a person is not one-on-one providing adequate advice, supervision, counseling, and support for you, then that person is not your mentor. If you see somebody from afar and follow that person, either online or other means, and you try to emulate the character of that person without any strict supervision from that person, then that person becomes your role model, not your mentor. So I would love to say Obama or Martin Luther King or this or that, but no, they are basically my role model because, yes, I think they carry a very huge embodiment of the actual black ideal, and I so much toe line and respect all that they did. But I have so many mentors, by the way. I don't want to start naming now.
All right. It has been great having you on the show, Mr. President Augustine Dickson Bona. It has been great having him, and I believe you might have learned a lot from all the stories that he has explained to us in different angles and in his path trekking into leadership. Till we meet next week, I am your host, Daniel Jonathan Bangro, and this is Reality Lab Untold Stories, Season 2, Episode 1. Thank you. God bless you.